good evening and welcome. I'm Karima Brown and you're watching Political Exchange, where we unpack Africa's political economy. Mismanagement, scandals and general malfunctioning continue to rock the National Youth Development Agency, the NYDA, but many remain hopeful that the controversial body can enable youth of South Africa to better access support and services. Joining me now is the man in the hot seat, the NYDA chairman, Yershen Pillay, who presented the first quarter expenditure and performance report recently to the Standing Committee on Appropriations amid a series of suspensions of senior managers and allegations of credit card abuse. Yershen, thank you so much for joining us here on Political Exchange. Many people will say, given the track record of the NYDA, why should taxpayers still be funding this agency? Make the case for the NYDA, given the fact that many people acknowledge that it simply hasn't done what it ought to have done for young people.
Well, I think firstly to acknowledge that indeed there has been problems in the past. But as we acknowledge that, I think media reports have really been unfair and inaccurate and incomprehensive. In fact, there has been a lot of good work that has been done, overshadowed by what would be, some of the problems of the past. Now, what we're trying to do then is to move away from that.
Okay, before we move away, let's just talk about, for example, the fact that 14 out of the 27 key performance areas of the first quarter of the financial year has been implemented. That's 14 out of 27, Yershen. You can do the math. That's not a good score, is it?
Well, it's not entirely true, because 7 of them never required a target to be met, simply because we changed our strategy. So there's been much criticism about loans, for example. But we said from the 1st of April that the NYDA is no longer offering loans. So a lot of those, so it's actually 14 out of 20 targets that have been met, which is a more than 60% excellence. So the other 7, we only expected to deliver on them in the second quarter.
You've got a budget of what, close to 400 million, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, that's an awful amount of money, particularly if you consider the fact that youth unemployment is double the rate of general unemployment. Young people really do bear the brunt of the structural inequities in our economy. Your agency is meant to drive empowerment for young people. Yershen, how has the NYDA done, particularly if we look at the kind of track record, your kissing contests where you had all these people from all over the world coming together, people just seeing a wanton waste of resources in the face of young people, really struggling to make it in the South African economy?
Well, I think that, to a large extent, as I said, we forget that the NYDA was a merger of 2 institutions of the past, the National Youth Commission and the Umsobomvu Youth Fund. The same budget that those institutions have, we still have today. Right. That's almost 3 years down. So take away inflation, take away all the other costs associated with running an institution, and we still have to manage with that kind of a budget, over and above managing the transition itself. But what we've said to ourselves is, we're not going to go to the National Treasury and ask for more money. What we would rather have is young people themselves say to the Treasury and to government that we see these good programs, the grant program, the scholarship program, the career guidance program, but why is the NYDA only able to assist 500, for example, when it comes to grants? Right. We like it. We want you as the Treasury to give them more money. So we would want to then make that case at not directly by ourselves, but young people who are beneficiaries of these to say, but there's more than just 500 young people who require grants. There's more than just 700,000 young people who require career guidance. And so assist the NYDA to do more. That's where we want to go to.
Okay, I want to come to where you're going, but let's first deal with what you've inherited. Sure. We've seen, for example, the NYDA being rocked by a series of resignations, suspensions, and a lot of the individuals are people that have historically been tied to the African National Congress's Youth League. Many people argued that the NYDA was just a conveyor belt for patronage to whoever led the Youth League at the moment. Now, the Youth League has been formally disbanded. We've had a new entity put in place. Yershen, how are you going to make sure that the NYDA is not just going to be, a vehicle through which people can access quick largesse depending on how popular they are in political organizations?
Well, let me say firstly that I don't agree that the NYDA is being been a vehicle for patronage and corruption. I don't agree with that at all. You've got more than 300 employees, many of whom are technocrats. They have technical expertise. They work in the 14 branches. They deliver products and services. They go home to their families and they live their lives. So what you have is a board of 7 who are expected to provide the political and strategic guidance. So
but that's where the problem has been, hasn't it?
Well, I mean, the budgetary constraints doesn't really relate to the board at the end of the day, because that's inherited from the past. The issues of performance, for example, doesn't really relate to the Act. And now currently the Act is going to go through a process of amendments to rectify those loopholes. So when you look at the legislative challenges and the financial challenges that the agency has experienced, it doesn't really point to now, I'm not suggesting in any way that in the past the NYDA has had no leadership problems. We acknowledge that. But as we acknowledge that there's been leadership problems, you also have to acknowledge there has been progress. And I think that's where the media has been really unfair.
Okay, let's give you the opportunity to sketch that progress. My understanding of youth development is that it's meant to be an integrated process, that you're not meant to ghettoize young people's issues either into whether it's a youth ministry or into a development agency, that you need to have cross-cutting focuses across ministries, because young people are affected by things like education, skills, a whole range of things. Take us through how the NYDA becomes an advocate for youth development across government agencies.
Well, I'll use 2 examples to illustrate. The one is the partnership that we currently have with the Ministry of Human Settlements, the construction sector, and various other entities in the construction field. It's called the Youth Built Infrastructure Development Program. This is a program that the NYDA coordinates in order for young people to be trained as artisans, plumbers, electricians, engineers, carpenters, etc. It's a partnership with the Department of Human Settlements.
How exactly does it work, Yershen? Who does the training? Is it the CETAs who do the training? Who does the intake? And the reason why I'm asking this is many people believe that they can't even get to be selected because they're not necessarily friends with the right people. So just take us through how exactly it works and who does what.
It's an open and transparent process, in fact, but it's also handled, a large part of it, by the various stakeholders. So the municipalities, for example, or your partners with your construction centers, your training institutes, would open it up to young people, but from the community.
Okay.
But they would say to the community, in this case in June, we took 100 young people in Langa. In Mshezi in KZN, we took 100 young people there. And in the Mshezi case, in the Escort area of KZN, it was a municipality that actually said, look, we would want to identify these young people to form part of the program. So, the NYDA becomes a scapegoat a large part of the time. But all this good work, gets sort of clouded in the good work that has been done. So it's the partnerships, the integration helps with the coordination at the end of the day by the NYDA.
Okay. Now, you've said earlier on by explanation that you're no longer giving loans because you've had difficulty in recovering the costs associated with those loans. Take us through what kind of loan book you operated, what kind of losses you've suffered, and why you've now transitioned from loans to grants.
Well, certainly, I mean, these challenges, by the way, they existed in the former Umsabomvu Youth Fund. And it was part of saying that, indeed, the NYDA and even former institutions never really had the capacity or the infrastructure to administer loans. And part of the transition, we had a microfinance portfolio, an SME portfolio, and we acknowledged that they were not doing very well. Young people were not paying back their loans. And so what we said is, what are the other institutions that are out there who have more capacity, who are able to recover loans better, and can be able to account for that better? Because at the end of the day, the NYDA is not a bank.
But how exactly did it work? Just take us through the process. Where would someone apply? How would the person's application be processed? And how would sign-off be gotten on person A getting a loan as opposed to person X?
A young person would walk into any one of our 14 branches. They would make an application for a loan. Depending on where the amount, if it was a microfinance loan of between 1,000 to 100,000 rand, a recommendation will be made by the branch, by the branch committee, which composed of the branch manager, technocrat, other technical experts in the branch, would make a recommendation then to the head office. The head office would have a committee, either microfinance SME committee, And so there were no individuals involved, but the committees would then
Right.
make approvals. So there was quite a process from the branch to the head office to the time of disbursement, from the application being made to the application being approved going forward.
Now, of course, giving out loans is a challenging thing, not just for an institution like the NYDA, but even for commercial institutions. And of course, given the kind of sluggish growth, issues around risk is a big thing, and many institutions are risk averse. Your agencies, that's supposed to be development finance agencies, are supposed to bring those developmental aspects to, the party. So I can accept that, for example, you perhaps had a different criteria for granting loans. But what about things like due diligence? What about things like the capacity to just recover the loans, in fact, within the cost structure that was allowed? Did you have the technical know-how, yes, to do that? And if you didn't, why did you proceed in, providing financial service in the way that you did?
We did, but not for the kind of market that we were. So, you've got currently 7.5 million young people in the country who are not in any learning institution or in any form of, economic activities. And a large number of them are making these type of applications. You're talking about 5 or 6 head office staff to then consider that, So it was really an issue of that kind of capacity
Right.
that we didn't have. And at the end of the day, we had to then make a decision to say, look, perhaps loan finance is not the right way to go as the NYDA, but it's part of learning. It's part of the progress that one makes as a state
Many people
institution.
say quite an expensive lesson.
An expensive but a worthwhile one. Because at the end of the day, what we've then said is we may not be able to provide loan finance, but access to finance is not the only challenge for a young entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
You've got other institutions now with the IDC and CIFA, and that's where we're moving to, who have capacity. And we are able to provide business development support through our voucher program, through mentorship, accompany them. And so you have state institutions working together to address issues of capacity and the other challenges.
I asked earlier if you could describe the size of the loan book. You kind of didn't answer that question. I'm going to bring it back. Give us a ballpark figure of what kind of amounts were disbursed in loans and what were you able to recover at the end of the day?
Look, we disbursed approximately about 27 million rand worth of loans.
That's a large amount of money.
A large amount of money, but I can share with you examples of those who have accessed those loans, who have become successful enterprises.
Well, take us through those examples, yeah?
Well, I received an email personally from a gentleman named Bongani, who runs his own transport company. He received assistance. He's now running his own transport company as a result of those type of loans. But again, we now said, look, let's have grants instead. Already we've got beneficiaries. In Orange Farm, I just visited 2 days back, a cooperative who received a grant for 60,000 rand to buy a bottle crusher to enable their recycling cooperative to now move from into the next step of their value chain, for that matter. So you see these tangible examples of the beneficiaries who are not exposed at the end of the day, and I think that's where we were saying as the NYDA, perhaps it's not a fair and accurate reflection of the state of the agency and where we are going to.
Quickly before we take the break, you said that you've made disbursements of about 27 million. What have you been able to recover of that figure?
Well, our loan book currently, before we made the transition, we were standing about an 80% impairment rate. So we were unable to recover about approximately 80% or more of that. And it's not to say that we're not going to recover that. We'll make attempts to recover that, as Minister Chibane had indicated in Parliament. But again, we then need to say, if it hasn't been working, therefore we've stopped it. And so we're not offering loans anymore as the NYDA.
Okay, Yershen, we have to take a short break, but when we return, we will continue our conversation with the NYDA Chairman, Yershen Pillay. Don't go away.